Welcome back to the show, everybody. This week on the Veterans Voice podcast, we are proud to host Chuck Bunch, who is here representing our sponsor for the show, USAA. Chuck brings with him a special message that him and I discuss deeply throughout the episode. This message is Face the Fight Coalition, a program founded by USAA to help prevent veteran suicide. Our mission here on the Veterans Voice podcast is to remind you all that you're not alone. As you hear through the stories of our guests, each and every week, we have all struggled, we have all turned to poor outlets to cope with life, and we have all felt alone at times. But these are the reasons we need to all be there for one another within the veteran community, a community whose voice is needed in America more than ever. On behalf of USAA and the entire team here at Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center, this is a reminder that you're not alone.
USAA is proudly celebrating 100 years of serving the military community. It was a group of soldiers who launched USAA in 1922 by joining together to insure each other's vehicles when no one else would. Since then, USAA has grown to more than 13 million members strong. And through it all, one thing has remained. USAA is still serving the military community and their families. Find out more at usaa.com/100.
Hey, thanks, Chappie. Privileged to be here today, and appreciate you allowing me to jump on the podcast. A little bit about myself, as you mentioned. Chuck Bunch, 20-year Air Force veteran. Been at USA for 5 years, and I currently work on the military affairs team. I also manage our employment resource group, VetNet, which is our veteran employees, our military spouse employees, and we just added allies and supporters. And part of that responsibility with VetNet, I have the privilege of partnering with Face the Fight initiative, which is, to me, personally, is very important. I think we both can agree, since we both served,
For sure.
that this is a sensitive and sacred topic in our community.
Yeah, Face the Fight, and the fight being veteran suicide, correct?
Correct.
So Face the Fight Coalition is something that USAA helped founded, right? It was one of 3 founders, and the overall mission is to prevent veteran suicide. And I think specifically some of the numbers you were saying is 50% by 2030. So how do you guys plan on doing that? What's Face the Fight all about, and where's it going?
No, that's a great question. I think, when it first was founded in June 2023, USA helped lead the coalition, and the 3 original founders is USAA, Reach Resilience, and Humana Foundation. Since then, we're around 180 coalition partners, and we're continuing to build that. But what I would say is we're combining a multitude of things, whether it's just organizations wanting to get involved, whether we're adding the clinical piece to it. But this obviously has been a topic that is, just is a mystery to people. How do we mitigate this? And so for me, personally, as a veteran and then being a USA employee, I'm just so proud that USA stepped up and said, hey, this is something that we need to be a part of. We need to start. And we helped encourage, the rest of the coalition partners. And I can say from past experiences before I came to USA, USA has looked at setting the example. And when USA says, hey, this is something that's very important to us, people tend to get involved. And so we've been very blessed that we've had such great support, and we continue to grow that.
Yeah, funny story about USAA. I joined the military at 18. I've never had a bank account, never had car insurance. And like USAA, I think I actually thought it was required. Like you're in the Army, you get USAA for everything. And I'm glad I did, because you guys have been taking care of me for over 14 years, me and my family. So the fact that you guys are just hopping on board and keeping up with all of us veterans who've been around this entire, Afghan war time frame, it's really refreshing. So I appreciate it as one of your guys' customers, but on everyone's behalf, we appreciate it. So all these wars are coming to an end. Afghanistan, Iraq, it's been a couple of years now, but mental health is just becoming more and more of an issue. How did you guys recognize this niche that needed to be handled, and why did you guys jump on board?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, being at USA and how I was involved, going back to the manager of VetNet, our employment resource group, we were asked to come in, as a veteran focus group. And we had leaders that were contemplating getting involved because it's a very, sensitive subject. And we all agreed that, this is something that USA could help lead. So, just stepping in there and then, like I said, getting the right clinical partnerships. And then as we continue to grow, looking at those organizations that support, or support or have resources that are going to help mitigate and encourage veterans to seek, raise their hand and ask for support. I can tell you from personal experience, I'm sure you experienced it as well, that, we are expected to drive through things, be mentally tough. And sometimes when we raise our hand and we ask for help, it could be perceived as weakness, but people are starting to discover that you're more of you have more strength when you raise your hand, you ask for support. Because the beautiful thing about that is you're no longer alone. Once you raise your hand and you ask for support, there's people willing to support you. And that's all we're trying to do is encourage that support and reach out and ask. Know that there's resources out there for you.
Yeah, I told you before the microphones turned on, that's our whole motto on the podcast is you're not alone. We say it every single time, usually right before your USAA ad, actually. So we're grateful to have you guys on board with this mission. But yeah, like you said, being in the military, you raise your hand for an injury or a mental health issue or a marriage issue or any kind of issue. And it's like they might at face value say, it's okay, like we'll help you, but you just feel like it's weak. It's being weak. I got to be this strong, tough soldier, willing to deploy, do PT, do whatever, whenever. And then you get out and you're like, you keep that mentality almost. And I think it hurts us, wouldn't you say?
No, I agree. I mean, I can say personally, you bring up a great point. I look back at my times in the military, and maybe I was in a leadership position and people are looking to me for strength. And you're trying to manage through your stressors.
For sure.
And you're trying to keep it all together. But you're also the rock for everybody else. And you just feel drained at times because you don't want to see them. You don't want them to see you in a weak spot. And then, they start worrying and things start falling apart. So I think we carry that burden because we've been so selfless for so long, or we've been taught to be resourceful and manage and navigate through tough times, sometimes alone, because we don't want to unveil that we're struggling at times, and it's okay to struggle. That's normal human nature. I mean, stress, no one's immune to stress. No one's immune to tough challenges, but sometimes we're reluctant to raise our hand and say, hey, can I just take a knee on this one because I'm struggling this time.
For sure. And there's resources like you guys, Mount Carmel. We just gave you guys the whole tour over here. We're trying to make it easy for people to raise their hand. So that's great. You guys are doing that.
And good point, Chappie. I mean, shout out to Mount Carmel, one of our, 180 coalition partners. Just really impressed by going through the tour and seeing the one-stop shop, the warm handoffs that occur there. And as we were discussing, sometimes we're reluctant to ask for those help, but I can tell you by visiting there, you just felt welcome. You felt that people were sincere and caring and that they want to help you.
Yeah.
And I think when I walked in there, I was like, wow, what a great atmosphere that we can provide to this, that you can provide to this community, because I assure you, I felt it right away when we walked in there.
Yeah. I'm glad you felt that, because that's what we try and tell everyone on this show and just in Colorado in general, because we're all over Colorado. But if you haven't and you're listening and you haven't come down to Mount Carmel Veteran Service Center, just come by, say you're a veteran, and let us take the wheel, because we'll show you everything we have to offer for you guys. Well, I want our listeners to have the opportunity to get to know the person behind Face the Fight Coalition. So how about we dive into your military career a little bit?
Sure.
20 years Air Force?
20 years Air Force, medical background just like you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Had the fortune of working with the Army and the Navy and teaching combat medicine, so got to speak the different languages and understand different cultures in the military. And I would say it was such a privilege, because oftentimes those that may not have the opportunity to serve, sometimes they think veterans they can all speak the same language, but we come from different backgrounds and cultures, and sometimes we speak different languages. But I was very fortunate to be able to have experience around those different services, so I can understand and I can, interpret, and read certain body languages that tell me where I might, not push in, but just be a little bit more patient and see if they're willing to open up and just be an active listener.
Yeah. What year did you join?
So I joined in 1993, January 1993, and I retired in September 2013.
What made you join, would you say?
Well, I would say that my father was in the Air Force as well. He spent 20 years. My mother, came from the island of Guam. A little story, not to get too much off topic,
Please.
but what's very interesting about the military is how we can form bonds, and this is globally. So my father, being from, a small town in East Tennessee, was stationed in Anderson Air Force Base in Guam. And small world, my wife's mother is from Guam as well. Well, my father-in-law was also stationed, coming from Virginia, was stationed in Guam along with my father. They met. They were actually bunkmates.
Oh, funny.
So fast forward, they were best of friends. They were pursuing their wives at the time, and both have been married over 50 years. But my mother-in-law, just where my dad retired in Tennessee, in Tullahoma, Tennessee at Arnold Air Force Base, she received an assignment coming out of South Carolina, civil service assignment, to Arnold Air Force Base. And that's where I met my wife. Tied the stories together, and both our fathers were bunkmates.
Man, that's
back
a cool
in the day.
story.
So I didn't mean to get off topic, but I'm just how neat how our worlds are pulled together, through the military.
Yeah, for sure.
So father, actually following in my father's footsteps and my father-in-law's footsteps. And I would say what was very rewarding at USAA, 2 years ago, I had the privilege of hosting or emceeing our Veterans Day ceremony. And the theme was Uncommon Bonds Forged by Service. And I was able to share that story. So when we celebrated our 100-year anniversary, we were able to take our uniforms, and we had a flag that was woven by Jeffrey Stenbaum. That was a veteran that helped display these flags where they're made out of uniforms. Going back to the story when we were in when we were touring Mount Carmel, through art, through that type of therapy, and he's actually teaches art in Minnesota. And he goes back, he was in the Army, and he mentioned that through art, it saved his life. And because he had contemplated taking his life. But through that, he was able to express his feelings and, kind of, like come to terms and say, hey, I'm more valuable here than gone. So it was a real touching story when I was in the studio when he was sharing that story. But as we were walking down that hallway and we saw the art posted on the wall, it just reminded me of that story.
Yeah.
But I'm just tying in all those things about, our bonds in the military, why I served, and then why we're just so loyal to each other, because that camaraderie, that esprit de corps is second to none, in my opinion,
Yeah, and it'll never go away. And I think a lot of veterans start to struggle when they get out because they let that go.
Correct.
They lose touch with their buddies. It doesn't matter if it's like a basic training buddy from 15 years ago or longer in some cases. I bet you could call them right now.
Correct.
They would answer like no years have gone by. And I think that's what we all miss. So that's what we're trying to accomplish through this podcast. We got people listening globally, but nationwide for the most part. And I think they just listen to hear some veterans talking and tell some funny stories and feel like they're back on, some deployment somewhere or TDY somewhere. And that's all we're trying to do here. So
it's funny you say that. And that's so true. I mean, I've served with others that maybe hadn't seen in 15, 20 years. We come back, we reunite, and it's like time's never passed. But we have that instant trust based on that shared experience. And that's what's so neat. And like I said, I'm so honored to have wore the uniform. It never was a right. It was always a privilege.
yeah, for sure.
And I think that's what we all share. And, hopefully, I think through some of our struggles, there's that buddy system out there, a friend that you served with, or someone that, maybe wore the uniform. They're willing to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all trauma bonded with each
Yes,
other.
correct.
Well, yeah, I want to kind of talk about how you got involved with Face the Fight Coalition. You were telling me a story about a deployment. You dealt with suicide personally. Do you mind going down that road a little
Sure,
bit?
sure. I look back at, there were times where I was serving, maybe was in a leadership position. We'd have a suicide in our squadron, and then we would do 100% contact. I remember you just it would hurt, you would hurt for that family or for that member, like wondering why, but we would do it 100% contact on the ones that were leading. And then I go fast forward in Afghanistan in 2010 and 11, and as a senior enlisted advisor, there were 3 suicides I responded to. And because the leadership on the camp would go, anytime we had something like that. And it was just very sad to see, because all 3 were within 2 weeks of going back home.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder, you're like, wow, it's like this should be a happy time. You're going back, you're reuniting with your family, but for some reason, that choice was made. And so that kind of like really weighed on me. And I was like, and I remember, at least one of them I knew I used to see, interact with them quite a bit. And it just like, wow, what could I have done?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else I could have done? Is there anything their team members could have done? You just start questioning yourself and you start feeling guilty. And then as I got out of the military, I got in the transition space, which is another vulnerable time. And as you were mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
when we leave the military, that tribe we were a part of, you feel like you've lost that.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you rekindle that? How do you reintegrate back into society, into the community, and be a productive member in your community?
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes we struggle with that.
For sure.
And because we're trying to navigate that by ourselves sometimes, because
Yeah.
we don't want to burden others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, I think it takes being exposed to a suicide to fully understand it. Unfortunately, in the military, we experience it a lot. My first exposure was when I was 16 in high school. My best friend, Sam Esposito, we were just the 2 guys that were always messing around. We were in the woods playing airsoft, doing whatever. And our plan was to join the Army.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to join the Army, and then we were not going to go to college. We were kind of being rebels with it. Well, his parents started getting divorced when we were 17. He was going to move to California. He wasn't going to be able to finish high school, and he ended up killing himself. His father had a pistol on the kitchen table. His parents were arguing, and he just grabbed it and killed himself. That was my first exposure. It was very young, and I hate to say it, but it's just kind of always been a part of my life. I started losing friends after basic training to suicide, to deployments, and I mean, most recently, about a year and a half ago, one of our teammates in Special Forces tried to kill himself. So I was a medic, so I had to respond to it. And that's kind of why I became passionate, because I'll never fully understand how you get to that point. I've struggled with thoughts when I was getting out. This huge shift in my life, 18 to 31, I was in the military, and then I started to get medically retired for PTSD, and it was just a lot to handle. And I was like, can I even do this? Can I get out? I don't even know what I am when I get out. I was 18 last time I was out of a uniform. So yeah, it's tough, but I think, like I keep saying, you guys, Mount Carmel, all of us as veterans, we can help each other, and just keep telling each other that you're not alone.
No, and those are great points, Chappie. I would say I get a lot of questions from allies and supporters, and they tell me, they'll say, Chuck, I don't think I can help because I didn't serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I always politely disagree with them, because I tell them, like, can you actively listen? Can you care for somebody? Can you sincerely and authentically empathize with people? I think because that builds trust. And from that trust, people are willing to confide in you and tell you they need help.
Mm-hmm.
A story that really resonates with me is when I was with the USO, and I stopped by. It was a United Way kickoff campaign, and there was a Marine there. His name was John. And he goes, Chuck, I give all my money to the USO because they saved my life. I didn't press why, how so. I just listened. And I allowed him to, confide in me. So, one, we're both veterans, but I want him to feel comfortable in telling me. If he decides to tell me, that's fine. If he doesn't, I'm not going to press. Mm-hmm. But he told me, he goes, I had made the decision to take my life and written the letter to my parents, purchased a weapon, was ready to execute. And I happened to stop by a USO, which the USO is powered by volunteers. Mm-hmm. And most of the volunteers are individuals that didn't have the opportunity to serve, but they serve in other ways. They have a servant heart, and they really care about the military community, and they want to support. That particular USO volunteer cared for them, just listened, mm-hmm. but sensed that John was disturbed mm-hmm. or was having trouble. And John said he was so moved that he decided, he said, you know what, I'm not going to take my life. Mm-hmm. And I tell people that all the time because you don't know what an act of kindness, how far that goes. There's no telling how many conversations we may have had mm-hmm. where we cared for somebody, we were vulnerable with them, we were able to share and say, hey, I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. If you ever want to talk or, just know I'm here for you mm-hmm. if you ever need me. That goes a long way. You don't know how many maybe situations may have been avoided because we chose to, care and take more time, because life is pretty hectic as it is. And sometimes we forget. We're like, hey, I go to the next meeting or I need to do this. And sometimes people are treated transactionally. Sometimes they feel like, hey, it's not worth staying here because I'm better off gone because I'm not noticed, I'm not valued, I'm invisible. Whatever the case may be, you don't know how you're making someone feel. Mm-hmm. So it's always good to take the time to care for somebody, treat people with respect and dignity, and also let them know that you're there to support them if, we all struggle. We all go through challenges, but we're here for each other. Mm-hmm. And please don't try to do these things alone.
Right. Yeah, we've joked on here a couple of times that we've solved all the world's issues on this podcast, but one of them is if we were all just kind to each other.
Correct.
I feel like it would solve so many issues. And it's just like, it really takes a lot of discipline when someone expresses anger at you and then you respond calmly. It usually switches because that person is just projecting anger at you because they would need – that's how they've been treated most of their life, most likely. But, yeah, it's really sad. I just feel like a little bit of kindness would go a long way.
You bring up another great point, and I've been in situations where people have popped off on me and, and I just say, hey, is there something I can help you with? You seem pretty frustrated, and that calm demeanor sometimes, and there's been times where they've told me, I'm just having a bad day or I'm going through a divorce or I'm going through this. I lost a child. There's different things that they've confided in me, and I was so relieved that I didn't retaliate with the same type of response mm-hmm. because you don't know what that person would have done after that. Mm-hmm. I just happened to say, you know what? I'm not going to match them with anger. I'm going to. That's not who I am. Maybe they're having it. You don't know what people are going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a pretty good example of that. I was a DJ for about 2 years at Blondie's nightclub here in Colorado Springs. And there was one evening, there's always those guys at 2 a.m. when it's closing that are starting to fight everybody. Mm-hmm. And this guy just had it out for me. I don't know why. I was just doing my own thing, sober, closing up for the night, getting ready to go home. And he just needed to start an issue with me. And I just put my hand on his shoulder and I was like, hey, man, I haven't done anything to make you mad. I understand you're upset. Let's just talk about it. We went back inside, grabbed a drink after hours, and the guy started crying to me. He said, my girlfriend left me this week. I was out tonight trying to meet some people. I got way too messed up. And he just opened up to me, and I was like, man, this is it. This is the root of all anger. People are just taking it out on other people because they're upset. And ever since then, I've never really been able to look at angry people the same. I don't give everyone sympathy, but when someone's angry, it's usually just a deeper issue and they just need some love probably.
No, that's a really great point. I think, like I said, I think our recommendation would be, before you think about retaliating or, because sometimes it happens. But before we do that, just think about maybe you do a gesture like you said and say, is there something you'd like to talk about? I mean, I don't really want to argue with you.
Right.
It's not worth it. Is there something I can help you with? You know?
Well, let's transition a little bit. I want to talk about that PT event you guys got coming up tomorrow.
Sure.
You guys hydrating?
We're hydrating, yeah, for sure. You know, this elevation reminds me like I'm back in Afghanistan again. I'm like,
It's
wow,
thin up
you know.
here,
So I'm definitely hydrating. So we're having our 0-day PT event. This has been going on since 2008. To me, it's one of our marquee events at USAA. And when we talk about culture being our secret sauce and, you know, honoring our membership, to me, this is one of the marquee events. So this is an opportunity for our employees to walk in the shoes just for a short time frame, walk in the shoes of what our members go through on the first day of basic training. And, you know, we understand that there's different age levels. We're not out there trying to conduct a smoke session. We have medical out there. You know, we have people with different, you know, impairments, whether it's, you know, maybe visual. You know, we've had people in wheelchairs participate at the 0-day PT event. But what it does is it gives you a taste what our members go through. But more importantly, you come out as an individual, you know, initially. But there's all these train-up sessions and safety sessions that we go through, and it's a shared experience. And what really warms my heart is, you know, from past experiences, 0-day PT, is we've created these groups where they're part of a squad or a platoon, and it is really neat to watch how they communicate and how they work as a team. And like, hey, we're going to meet here before we drive onto the campus to participate. Let's all meet here and let's account for everybody. Showing teamwork, just like we did in the military. And I tell you, I've seen some moving experiences, whether it was, I remember in Tampa last year, we had an employee that was very emotional, and he was in the medical tent. And come to find out, his brother was killed in action. And he was so overwhelmed with emotion because he felt like that was connecting with his brother's memory. He was honoring his brother. It was very moving. I mean, he was just in tears, and it was just very moving because he's like, wow, I feel like I'm honoring my brother's memory. And so that's what it does. But what I love about the experience too is you go as a team. You know, never forget, when we talk about face the fight, I think it aligns with that buddy system approach, because that's what you're utilizing to get through this experience. You feel like you're on top of the world at the end. You get tore down like we were in basic training. They break you down, but they build you back up as a team. As an individual, if you go in there as an individual, you're gonna fail.
So it sounds like this is like actually difficult stuff you guys do.
It's challenging. It's probably more mental than physical. There's physical challenges, but safety and authenticity are the two primary, things we focus on.
Okay.
But it's all to ensure that everybody gets through together and they share this experience as a team. They accomplish it as a team. And then it concludes with a 1.5 mile, run at a slow pace, because we're running at the slowest members' pace, because everybody finishes as a team. If someone falls out, they circle back. They're going to complete it as a team. So it's the same thing when we talk about, like I said, face the fight. It's that team approach or that buddy approach, and that we can't do things alone. It's such a great life lesson, and I think this is like our culture in action, like I said, with 0-day PT. It's just, like I said, one of our marquee events. And we're excited about it tomorrow. I mean, it's a little early. I mean, we're going to be out there probably about 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's part of it, though, right?
It's part of it, the whole disorientation of, you're tired, and there's some verbal motivation going on, as you get onto the execution area. I mean, all that stuff is going on. It's dark, but that's all part of the experience, and it's just to get a taste of what our members go through.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think how you build worthwhile relationships in life is you struggle together, and then you work through it, and then you grow. You know, like in a romantic relationship, the first sign of issue, a lot of people give up, which leads to divorce and breaking up too early and things like that. You have to put in effort. And I think, this is a great example through you guys, but Special Forces selection, we have an entire week for Team Week. And just one very brief example, we have a Humvee that only has 3 tires. And I think we had maybe 10 to 15 guys. I don't remember exactly, but we had to move that thing 8 miles, 9 miles, starting at like 1 in the morning, and you had to be done in the next 24 hours. I think it was a blur, man. But I just remember some of like, you want to kill each other in the moment. And then when you're done, you're like, hey man, that was good.
I love you, man. I love you.
I love you. And they were all crying.
But it's that shared experience. You're exactly right. I think it's really refreshing to see that many of those individuals that have shared that experience, like you said, they went through those struggles together. They remain strongest of friends and teammates at USAA. It is really refreshing to see, and I think it's such a great example how these bonds can be formed. And that's, a great example of, in the military, that's how we form those experiences. I mean, those bonds through those shared experiences that we go through. A lot of sacrifice, a lot of frustration, a lot of things that we endure, but at the end, we surface victoriously.
For sure. Yeah, you got to do difficult stuff in life too, just to grow in general. I think my girlfriend thinks I'm crazy, but we do like a monthly like couples thing that's hard. Like the other month, we took a 30-pound bag of rocks up the incline. Have you guys seen the incline here?
No.
It's 1 mile staircase straight up a mountain. So we just passed it back and forth. We wanted to kill each other, and at the end we were crying and kissing. So I don't know. I think it's important to struggle. That might be the military in me for sure.
Correct.
But people avoid struggling nowadays, and I just think that's hurting us.
I totally agree with you. And those challenges, those opportunities that you fall short, to me, it strengthens character. It builds resilience. There's a lot of great attributes that when you take those experiences and you make that transition to your local communities, to me, those are so invaluable, because not too many people go through that. I look back and I'm like, you're interfacing with, the community that you now are part of, and you think they've been exposed to a lot of those elements, and that's not so much the case. That's why I so much appreciate my military experience, those that I serve with, and because it's made me who I am.
For sure.
And forever grateful, for sure.
I've never heard anybody regret being in the military. They might talk terrible things about it, but at the end of the day, they always say it made me who I am today, which is just really special. So
you came out a better person, for sure.
Absolutely. I want to go over like some upcoming things you guys have with Face the Fight Coalition, but before that, we have a tagline on the show. We ask all of our veteran guests to share a story. Just a story that can relate to listeners. Maybe it's a funny basic training story. Maybe it's an inspirational or emotional story from a soldier you served with. Just any kind of story from when you were active duty that other veterans would laugh or cry with you about.
I remember when we were leaving Afghanistan in 2011, and once again, you're talking about you absorb all these feelings and everybody's, fear, all these variety of feelings that people are going through. And so at the end, before we were left, the group was acknowledging, and they were like, from the beginning through our training and this, and we never relish in acknowledgement, right? We're kind of like the ones that like to stay in the back, like in the back, everybody else push to the front and get acknowledgement. And so I remember they were acknowledging me, and they were saying from the beginning, of our training, the strength, the heart and soul of this group was Master Sergeant Bunch. And I remember as soon as they started saying that, and they're talking about all this strength, and here I am, I just like start breaking out and crying like a little baby, And I'm like, not so strong now, But I remember I look back, but it was okay. I look back at it. Maybe it was kind of funny because they joke. They used to send me pictures like where me crying, like holding my eyes. But I look back at it, and those are one of the best memories because I'm still close with those individuals, and they reach back to me so many times to say, thank you so much of the impression, the impact you made in my life. I am who I am in the military because the influence you had during that deployment. So that warms my heart. But I look back at it, and I was vulnerable then, and Probably, I wasn't so manly at that time, but I felt like it was okay to share that. So I'll unveil that. But I cried like a little baby. I was just streaming tears.
Right.
And I never got emotional the whole time. I mean, they were like surprised, but I thought I was in a safe space and they were family and I loved them all. And I was just going to let it go. And I did.
Yeah. So you keep saying like you didn't feel like that inside, but everyone else felt that way about you. Did you have like kind of an imposter syndrome as you went up through the ranks in the military, would you say?
You know what? People mention that. I don't think I ever felt that way because I was always taught. I never had an identity crisis. I knew who I was. I was always taught to, that's the way I was raised. And everything that came to me was a result of being sincere, authentic, speaking from the heart. And I think that when I look back at my military experience, and even till this day, that's something when I speak from the heart, I think people gravitate towards that. So I was very fortunate. I really was confident in that. What I would say is another great learning lesson, if we have time, I don't know if I'm pushing the envelope here, but probably at my 8-9 year mark before I was getting ready to my enlistment was coming up, I put in my commission for medical service corps officer. And I thought I think in your life, I will say, I'll rewind that because I did struggle. That was a big struggle in my life. I would say that was a turning point for me. To me, I think, the best combination anybody you can have is confidence coupled with humility. At that time in my life, when I got my MBA, I was a little overconfident and I needed to be humbled. And I remember walking through with my mentor and he'd say, Chuck, we really think you should be commissioned. He goes, but sometimes it's about timing. And he goes, the most important thing to remember is, are you okay with the person in the mirror? Because rank, medals, different things in life, they don't define who you are. It's your character and your values and things like that. And I remember thinking in my head, oh, that's great for somebody else. That's probably good advice, not for me, because I'm going to be commissioned. So I was very overconfident. So when I didn't get selected, I was like, whoa, they made a mistake. And I was like thinking, well, maybe I need to get out of the Air Force. I can't believe you didn't commission me. But I look back and that was the best thing ever happened to me because I needed to be humbled and I needed to be okay with the person in the mirror. So I would say my upbringing, I lost sight shortly. That experience brought me back. And then from that point on, I really was comfortable with the person in the mirror.
That's really good advice. Confidence and humility. That's a good combination.
If you can find that, to me, I just found so much great, successful outcomes from confidence, because people sense it. It's going to be pure. It's going to be authentic, because people can sniff out artificial behavior.
Yeah, everyone knows the guy who lets the awards and rank define himself, and he's got to tell you what he's done and who he is before you even get to know his first name. Can't stand him. Well, as we close up here, is there anything in the upcoming future, past 0 Day tomorrow, for Face the Fight Coalition that you guys have coming up?
Well, as we go into year 2, Face the Fight will continue to grow and advance in its mission by deploying nearly, $17.5 million in grants.
Jeez.
Raise an additional $50 million in philanthropic commitments. So we've already, accrued quite a bit of, commitments, but we're going to continue to grow. We're going to add different elements to it. So we're excited. The impact's going to continue to grow. And to me, that's all part of collective impact because we're stronger together than USA can't do it alone. We can't do it with the founding partners. The more coalition partners that we can bring on, people that are committed to collective impact, we're only going to, make that big impact in the military community.
Just another great example of you're not alone. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Chuck. Good luck on your 0 Day PT. I might come hide in the bushes just to watch.
You should do that. You should just pop out. You could parachute in.
I actually asked Audrey if she needed help with people yelling at people. I was like, I'll come out. I look nice, but I can turn it on.
Yeah.
But Yeah, no, it'll be fun. I'm excited you guys are here. I'm grateful you guys are actually able to come to the studio, being down in San Antonio. And it was nice being here in person with you guys. So, any closing comments or anything?
Chappie, just thank you again for the opportunity. And,
Mhm.
like I said, it was a privilege to wear the uniform, not a right. And just like you, I'm honored to serve alongside you.
All right, thanks, Chuck. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you for your service.